Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Dr. Carolyn Coca-Ross Show. We have a special guest again today. It's Francine Rogers, and she was on the show, it's been about a month now, I think. And she's going to talk to us about food and money, that connection, why you binge on both. One time food, one time money. Welcome, Francine.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background so people can remember. How did you get into working with, money stuff?
It's so ironic because I've been bad with money for so many years of my life. And I finally got so frustrated with myself, where I was at, and I took steps to regain control of my money. And that involved in delving into why I spent money the way that I did. And I found it so interesting that eating and your spending habits have a direct correlation. And as I started to recognize the signs of me eating and spending money recklessly, I trace it back to my sexual abuse. I was raped when I was like 21 years old, and that's when things really started to get out of control.
So there's a combination. In other words, there's an underlying cause of both, which in your case was trauma, and the trauma impacted your eating habits, and it also impacted your spending habits. Now, didn't you go to school to study about finances, and aren't you working in that field now?
I did. I got laid off in 2008, and I decided to go back to school. I majored in business administration, had to take a lot of finance classes at the University of San Diego. And I thought, and while I was there, I was under a lot of stress, and I just looked at my habits. I didn't have any money, so I really was forced to change my habits. But I was okay with that because I was working towards a goal. And as I started to get more information, as I started to reflect on my life and meditate on some of the things that I was doing in the past, I thought, you know what? I can change my money habits. And I slowly began to change my money habits. And I started to look at why I was doing what I was doing. And that sort of catapulted my journey into this whole credit repair, restoration, because I had to fix my credit. I had to fix my finances and get into this whole, you know what, you can't spend now and don't think about the future kind of thing. So that's how it all started.
Yeah, so what I'd like to just ask you a couple questions about that. Sounds like you had an awareness, kind of an aha moment or aha process where you recognized that the trauma was kind of the underlying root cause. So were you also forced to address the trauma? Did you end up getting, treatment for that or counseling?
I did. I have been seeing a counselor for a while. And the big thing is I tend to be a perfectionist, and I tend to do too much. And that kind of combination can be sort of catastrophic. So as I started to delve into those kind of things, like not being perfect all the time, not being in control all the time. And what is so ironic about that whole thing, while I was eating and while I was out of control and while I was spending recklessly, you can tell when you're out of control because I'm overweight. Yeah. So there was something wrong. So this whole idea of perfection that I had, like buying the nice clothes, buying the things, everybody knew something was wrong because I was overweight. And it didn't even faze me until my chiropractor and my therapist says, everybody knows what's going on with you because there's something going on with you because your weight is so out of control. And that kind of awareness brought me like face to face with the assault that I had, with everything I've done the last 20, 25 years. And I just didn't see the correlation, but it was directly linked to the assault. And, we started making progress towards me resolving those issues that I had around the assault from 20 years ago.
Okay, so it's really interesting that in spite of the assault and what happened after, you really did not see those two as being linked at all. And
Not at all.
that is so common. I see so many people who have had, tremendous traumas in their lives, and they discount it. They say, "Oh,
Yes.
well, my life wasn't that bad." That's what they say.
Yes.
It wasn't that bad. Oh, yeah, I had a few things happen to me, but it was so long ago.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you're validating is that whatever the trauma is, and for some people, it's not sexual assault. It could be neglect, abandonment. Having a parent who's an alcoholic, they are essentially abandoning you. There's a lot of other things that happen in our lives as humans, because as humans, we're going to have pain. We're going to have, bad things happen. You don't get out of this life without some bruises. So I just wanted to reiterate that for people who are listening and thinking, oh, well, yeah, I've never been raped, so I must not have had any trauma. But yeah, lots of people have trauma besides that. So what are some of the ways in which that affected your dreams, your goals, your motivation? Did you notice anything there?
That's a really good question. Um, I would say I was completely unaware of, because what happens is you get into this vacuum. When you push down like traumas, you get into this vacuum and you have a really good life. I mean, I would say I had a good life. I went to school, I got a degree, I had friends, I had a great social life, but I avoided relationships with men because I always felt I wasn't worthy enough to have any. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. And that was a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And so going forward, when I started to sit down and analyze what was going on, and my chiropractor's like, why don't you have a relationship with a man? I said, I don't know, no one wants me. He says, Francine, that's a lie. That's a lie. I've always avoided them or ignored them. I never returned their calls. I never dated. I just didn't think I was worthy enough. And then you compound that with the whole spending recklessly. Like, why would anybody want me? I'm overweight and I don't know how to pay bills. So to me, that was
how to pay. Yeah, no man wants a woman who doesn't know how to pay bills. That's for sure.
That was my mindset.
Yeah.
So I just avoided it for a long time. But what happens is you got to make human connection, and I wanted to be with somebody, and so it was basically me standing in my truth and say, okay, Francine, you are worthy to be loved despite the fact that you're overweight, despite the fact that you are a work in progress when it comes to your money. You are so worthy to be loved. God created me that way, and we need a human connection. Yeah. And so once I started to delve into that and understood that I had to love myself where I am at right now, it really catapulted me into like, okay, I want to pursue some really good things in my life. I never thought I wanted to open my own business until the realization came one day, like, tired of being frustrated at a job that doesn't appreciate me. I want to do this on my own. So literally in like 6 months, I thought, okay, it's time for me to quit my job. It's time for me to move forward. And that's exactly what I did.
Wow, congratulations. Some people stew on those ideas for years.
Yeah.
So on this podcast, I really wanted to delve into strategies that you have found to be effective.
Yeah.
So let's just talk a little bit more about money. So you were recklessly spending. Were you in debt and had credit card debt and all that stuff too?
All of that.
Okay.
All of that.
So
yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people are in that boat. So how do you start to turn around your money side? I think last time we talked about turning around the food piece, but how do you turn around the money piece?
You have to know where you're at, and you're going to have to start to face some things. And one of the things is you're going to have to list every debt you have, whether you do it in a spreadsheet or a piece of paper. You need to list every debt that you have. And people And let me tell you, I avoided doing this for years because the number can be a little overwhelming. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'll never
So
pay this off, right?
yeah, and that's how it is. And people are like, I didn't realize. Well, of course you didn't realize, because you're in this fog, because you don't want to face the problems that you're having over the last several years. So, and then the next step is to pull your credit report. You have to know where you're at, because the debt that you list on your spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, that debt may be completely different than your credit report. So the first step I tell people, you have to face your debt, and you have to face it in a very tangible way by looking at it on a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper.
Yeah,
And
and interestingly, that's really not much different from facing binge eating, for example. You have to, like a lot of people ask me, well, should I write down what I eat? Yes, okay. Should I write down what I binge on?
Oh
And
gosh.
that's where everything comes to a halt, because there's so much internal shame and embarrassment and so on. And the same, I think, on the money side, so much internal shame. It all goes into that funnel that says, I'm
Yes.
not worth it, I'm not lovable, etc.
Yes.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
So starting to face the truth, and you're recommending facing your debt.
Exactly.
All right. So
And
what happens next? Like you said, you couldn't even pay your bills. If you are in a lot of debt, you may be having trouble maintaining those debt payments and not have enough money to pay bills, right?
exactly. And the thing about it is that when you're so out of control and you don't know what's going on, a lot of times you start neglecting your basic housing expenses. Like, I don't know, cell phones are pretty, like, to me, cell phones are vital. Everybody has a cell phone now. So that's really like a fixed part of your housing expenses. So a lot of times you're behind on those kind of housing expenses. So the first thing you have to do is your housing expenses have to be your number one priority. You need to be caught up on all of your housing expenses, your mortgage, your rent, your gas and electric, your cell phone, your car insurance, your car payments. Those kind of fixed expenses should be current and up to date. That's my number one thing. If they're not, you need to move towards getting to be current.
Yeah.
And I know this goes against the grain, but your credit card payments, your unsecured debt should be secondary to your housing expenses. So I tell people, is everything caught up? Like just this past summer, we had it was hot this summer in San Diego.
Yeah.
And everybody's gas and electric bill was out of control. And I had this client, and she was saying, oh my gosh, my gas and electric bill was $1,000 for the month.
For the month?
For the month. I heard a lot of people say their gas and electric bills were just so out of control. Exactly. So you have to start to make adjustments in your budget for those kind of unexpected, increase in costs. So I always tell people, your housing expenses are your number one priority, because there's nothing more stressful. And it happened to me for years. I was always stressed about paying rent or paying something or paying my car note. That is the most stressful kind of thing that you can have, when you cannot pay your rent or your car note or whatever. And I remember numerous times I had to hide my car because I never paid my car payment on time.
You were worried about it getting repossessed?
Exactly. And it was so stressful. That is more stressful than making a credit card payment. Yeah. And then secondly, then figuring out a plan for your unsecured debt, how you're going to pay it. So you have to do things in order. And one is making sure all your housing expenses are current. And then secondly, coming up with a plan for your unsecured debt. And I help people go through that whole formulating a budget and a plan for that.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Let's start with this one. How do you help people deal with the emotional components that money brings? I mean, I grew up in a family where the debt, people were calling my dad on a daily basis, and we would answer the phone and they would start talking to us about my dad's debt, and
yeah.
So for me, there is a lot of embarrassment around money, and how do you help people deal with that emotional component?
The biggest thing is, well, you need to be able to alleviate the stress. And part of that is making sure your debt is in order.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing is, to me, most people that are in debt or having problems paying their bills, their housing costs or their fixed expenses, they're not paid. Once you get that in order and once that's paid, it seems like the stress just sort of like it
Okay.
decreases, and that helps a lot.
So it's kind of similar to when a person is able to decrease the number of times that they're binge eating,
Yes,
reduces the stress and allows them, it actually creates space for them
yes,
to look at their relationship with food. So you're saying it does the same thing for money. You're basically clearing off, like, like we were talking about a messy desk.
yeah,
Hard to work on a messy desk. And so basically you're clearing off that pile of mess on your desk
that's good.
by paying your debts. So you're creating more space. And once you have space, then you can start to see things a little more clearly. Let me ask you this question. Do you find that, because I know when I went through this, kind of clearing up my debt, that there's a lot of help for people who need help with their debt, but most of the time we're too embarrassed
Exactly.
to ask for it. Like, ask your landlord, is it okay if I pay you a week late? I'm not going to do that forever, but I need a little bit of a break right now. Or I had some huge medical bills a number of years ago, and I just went to the hospital and all of the different and said, hey, could you set up a payment plan, or could you give me a discount? And it's amazing. Like, the hospital gave me a discounted rate for cash that I didn't even know existed. And I am a doctor and I work in hospitals, but I didn't know
Wow.
that. Yeah.
That's the whole part about facing your debt. We're so like programmed to run away for it or don't answer the phone or just ignore it completely. We don't ask for help. A lot of credit card companies, your credit card companies will help you when you're in trouble. They want you to call because they want their money. And if your bill is $100 a month and you can only pay 40, they'll take it. It may hurt your credit score, but you're still making progress towards your debt. Let me just tell you something. Your credit score can always be, it doesn't take 7 years to repair your credit. It barely takes a year. So, but if you ignore your debt, it'll be 20 years later and you're still doing the same thing. So like you said, once you start facing it and once you say, you know what, I can't pay it, can you help me? Can you tell me what to do? Here's what I can do. And then when you start putting controls into place, like living on a budget, and a budget is basically telling your money where to go. You're in control of your money. Your money doesn't control you. You're correcting your relationship.
I've got to stop you, Francine, because that was so incredible. You said a budget is you telling your money where to go.
Exactly.
Say it one more time. A budget is you telling your money where to go, because I think for most people, a budget is like a meal plan or like a diet, and you feel like, oh, I feel like somebody's telling me what to do and having control. But in a budget, it's you telling your money where to go.
Exactly. What it means is that you're taking control over your money again. Your money should never control you. Yeah. And like living paycheck to paycheck, you're only living paycheck to paycheck because you don't know where your money's going. If you want to take your kids, me and my sister were talking about, she wants to take her kids to Disneyland in about a year. I said, sure, you can just go ahead and budget for that in about a year. She goes, I never even thought about it. I'm like, yeah, they have plans in place where you can pay for trips a year in advance for Disneyland and those kind of things. And she goes, really? I'm like, oh yeah, really? She goes, I said, you just have to tweak your budget. She goes, I can do that. Yeah. That's all it is. And
well, let me tell you an even bigger one. I struggle with my older kids to help them pay for college because I just never had any money. I made a lot of money, but it seemed like I don't know where it went. By the time I had my third son, I thought, oh, now I've got a really great job. Now I'm going to be able to help him pay for college. And then before he went to college, I lost my job. So there I am again, feeling ashamed that as a mother, well, I'm not going to be able to help my kid pay for college. This is horrible. I'm just the worst parent in the world. Why can't,
Oh,
why can't I get my money under control? I'm sure you've heard these sob stories before, right? But
oh
let me,
yeah, that's in my head. Yeah.
yeah, but let me tell you what happened. I did just what you are talking about. I figured out, so I went to a college finance counselor and they told me, oh yeah, you need to put aside this much money and blah, blah. And I realized I can't do that. But I figured out on my own that I could start putting money into, his college fund, the 529 or whatever, um, the year before he went to college. So I would put in 500 a month the year before he went to college. So I was a year ahead of each year of his college and was able to actually, help him pay for college by just saving at the last minute.
Hmm.
But like you told your sister, I did it a year in advance, and sometimes I put in 1,000 or 800 or whatever I
Hmm.
could put in, and so I was able to fulfill my dream of helping him pay for college.
And that's exactly what a budget is. You're just planning out different things. And so once you understand that a budget doesn't have to be restrictive, some budgets are restrictive because, I don't know, you're saving for something or you want to put extra money away for the next 6 months. That's okay. But a budget, I know people that budget a year in advance and there's different types or different methods. It should not be a taboo word. It's just that you're establishing control. You're correcting the relationship between you and money when you put yourself on a budget. You're saying, okay, I'm only going to spend $400 a month on food. And you're like, oh, okay. When you don't keep track of it, you'll look up and all of a sudden you spend $800 a month on eating out. And you'll be like, where did that money go? And I have had clients that are sitting there like shocked.
Yeah,
Shocked.
I didn't even know that was
They
happening.
spent that much money on food and they were so ready to budget because it just lets you know where your money's going and you're in control of it. That's all it is.
Awesome. So what about if, like you, someone is starting a new business and they have, money a lot of money going out for the new business. How do you live within your means and still, pay your bills and reduce your debt when you're kind of reaching for your dream or trying to fulfill your
That is a really good question. I've had to pull back on just about everything, and I'm okay with that because my dream is so much more than me going out to dinner with my friends or going on vacation everywhere. So I'm okay because I have something bigger in mind. So I was telling my friend the other day, I'm like, God, I haven't gone anywhere. Haven't done a mani or a pedi. I barely leave the house because I'm always working and it's nonstop. But that's what I want to do. And I don't feel any stress or struggle with it because I'm reaching for a larger financial goal. So if you have a financial goal and you're passionate about it and you want to do it, whether you're saving for college or saving for retirement or saving for that dream vacation, you'll do it because you're seeing you're seeing the progress every day and you don't mind it. Some people,
but you still have to pay your bills every day.
I still pay my bills every day. I have side hustles that I do on the weekends that help me pay my bills. I mean, I do a lot of stuff. But you know what? The ironic thing is you don't even mind doing it because you're seeing that goal come about to manifest itself. So you're working harder for it. It's a different reality. Instead of you like, oh, I ain't gonna face my bills and the phone's ringing off the hook and and all of this kind of stuff, as opposed to you're working towards your passion, you're working towards a goal. That's a different reality as opposed to you don't know what's going on and creditors are calling you all day. Two different realities.
And two different stress levels as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So the other question I have for you is about other skills that, like, do you need to develop money skills or do you need to hire a money coach like you, or what's the best way to learn more about how to handle your money?
It's so ironic what you said was like when you were little and your father would get phone calls. My mom would get phone calls too. I was never taught about money in school at all.
Yeah.
I never at all.
Me either. Yeah.
And it still continues to this day. I have clients where I have to teach them how to balance their checkbook.
Yeah.
Or I have to show them what a debit versus a credit in their what that means and how it impacts them. I had this one girl, she was getting overdraft charges, and she knew she was getting charged because she saw it in her account, but she didn't know why. And so sometimes
That's such a waste of money, isn't it?
Oh, big waste of money. So you may need a money coach to show you some things. I believe people should get a financial advisor just to make sure they'll have enough for retirement, because I heard something the other day, and it fascinates me that the number one reason why people can't enjoy their retirement is because medical bills creep in and they don't have enough saved up, and then these medical problems happen, and then they have to drain their savings. So I would advise to make sure you're on track, especially when you're in your 40s, to see a financial advisor to make sure you're on a retirement track. But if you need help, I think you should get help. If you need budgeting, you should get help. It doesn't mean it takes like a year to learn that. It just means that you need somebody else, you need another perspective to look at your finances to see where you can save money.
Yeah, I like the fact that you talk about that it doesn't take forever to learn, because I think some people feel it's just so overwhelming. I can't put any more work into something like this. And it's so blindingly embarrassing and shaming, so the fact that you can actually learn how to do this is really encouraging. Let's just talk briefly a little bit more about how the family money situation affects your own knowledge about money and your behaviors about money, because I see this a lot with food, right? I have patients whose like mothers or fathers even were either really aggressively overly focused on food or focused on their body or always dieting and so on, and that got passed down to them, just from when they were little kids. And it's a hard thing to break because they saw that modeled in their own home. So what about the family attitudes towards money?
Well, like we said earlier, I learned my mom's attitude towards money when I was younger. She just ignored the phone calls.
Yeah.
I would answer the phone too. I don't know where that came from, but I would answer the phone all the time, and people would be calling for money. My mom go, "Don't, I'm not here. I'm not here." So in my mind, I would start ignoring my bills when I couldn't pay them. Yeah. And that trend continued throughout my adulthood. And now, once I started to change and understanding that I have to face, it could be something so small, you still have to face it. Talk to those collection agents. You should know your rights, and I help you with that. Yeah. But you still have to face them. You can't, ignoring it, especially when it comes to money, it gets worse. Mm-hmm. I've had clients that, they've had repos on their credit reports. And what happens is once a car is taken and it's sold, you still have a balance left. And I tell clients and they're like, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore." Yes, you do. Because what happens is most lenders will sue you for that deficiency balance. Most people ignore it, and then they get their wages garnished out of the blue and they don't understand why. Wow. So you see how it escalated because you decided to ignore it. The biggest thing that you can do, and what I learned from my childhood, is you cannot ignore your debt. You have to face it. And it's always been such a taboo thing. I don't have it. It's okay that you don't have the money, but you can make arrangements. You can retweak your budget. You can get a side hustle and pay it off. Once you pay off a debt that's lingering, I remember I owed taxes. I remember when my dad died. And I had a $2,500 tax bill because I did my taxes wrong. I don't know what happened. And I called the IRS and she goes, "You can make payments." And then I looked at her like, "Payments?" Well, 10 years ago, I owe the IRS $20,000. I had to file bankruptcy because the interest and charges were accumulating. And I thought to myself back there 10 years ago, I said, "I'm never going to owe these people again because this is not a pleasant feeling at all."
It is not. You do not want to owe the IRS.
No.
Ever. Yeah,
ever. So once I paid off that $20,000 debt, and when I was on the phone with her for that $2,500 debt, I said, "You know what? Thank you for the payment arrangement. I have the money. I will be writing you a check today." I hung up, wrote a check, and sent it certified mail because you do not want to play with the IRS. And I have not owed them ever. So Yeah, so you cannot ignore debt. And that's the biggest thing I learned as a child. And that was the biggest thing I had to rectify when
Mhm.
I decided to take control of my finances.
Yeah, yeah. So, what about teaching your children how to handle money? If somebody's
Oh, that's
listening
good.
and they have kids, I mean, actually, my sons are much better at managing money than I ever was. And I have to say, they probably learned from watching all the stress that I put them through. I remember when I was younger, and we would go to a restaurant. When my older kids were little boys, and we'd go to a restaurant, and I'd pull out, my credit card, and it wouldn't go through.
Mm,
And I would have that sinking feeling of, oh my God, here I am. What am I going to do? And it would always work out, of course, but it was.
hmm.
I remember them mentioning to me how stressful that was for
Wow.
them to be sitting there while the waiter is like, "What? Your card didn't go through. We need the money," and then they're getting embarrassed and ashamed. So
Wow.
I'm just outing myself because it's not just people who aren't in the professions who don't know how to manage money. I mean, obviously, as a physician, I thought I should have done better, but I just didn't know any better. So,
Yeah.
um, but I think from watching me, they probably vowed in their own minds to do a whole lot better, and they certainly have done better than I have. But how do you teach your kids about money?
Um, the biggest way you can teach your kids about money is let them see how you pay debt. Talk to them about how you pay bills. When they want something like I think my niece, she wanted a new iPhone. You know how much iPhones cost? Like $1,200, and she's 14 years old.
What?
Yeah. I'm looking at her like, okay, let's just talk about this. You need to have those active conversations with kids about money when they want certain things.
Yeah.
Well, you want a $1,400 iPhone. Do you want to go to Disney World in the next year or so? Then that means you can't get this iPhone. What are you going to contribute to the cost of this new iPhone? So you need to have an active conversation, especially when they get to be preteens, 10, 11, 12 years old. You can talk to them like, no, you just can't get stuff. Instead of saying no, you need to have an active conversation with them as to why they can't get it. Well, honey,
Or instead of just saying, we can't afford that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And say, you know what, honey, we're on a budget. Our budget doesn't allow it this week. Um, you're probably going to have to can you go and mow a lawn? Can you do some extra chores around the house to get it? You can't just say, no, we can't afford it. That's not good enough anymore. And then you need to show them how to balance a checkbook, what it means to rack up credit card debt. Um, I'm all for giving a 18-year-old like a small a credit card,
Yeah.
maybe $500, so they can start learning how to pay their credit cards off in full. And
Mhm.
you have to be the guiding force with them. You have to say, okay, you spent $300. How are you going to pay this bill off by the 25th of the month when it's due? Have an active conversation with your children about money. Just don't let them see you stress all the time about how you're paying the bills. That's not showing them. We
Yeah.
have to be more active with our kids about money, especially in the age where student loan debt is so out of control right now.
It's outrageous. I thought it was out of control. I had student loans for medical school that were $40,000, and
That's not really a lot.
I know nowadays it's not a lot, but back then that was a lot. But it took me literally 20 years to pay it off
Yeah.
because it's just all the interest accumulates and so on and so forth. So, but I know that many kids now, and that's why I wanted to help my kids with college, because I didn't
Hmm.
want them to come out with a huge debt, to pay. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And then even, um,
The other thing I wanted to just mention is what you said is so important, and that is modeling for them, not just
mhm,
telling them what to do, but
exactly.
modeling how we pay our bills, how we look at money, how we talk about money, all of that. And that's the same again for food, because so many parents, are like, well, if you eat that, you're going to get fat. That's not, that's,
Exactly.
that's the same as saying we can't afford it, which, which gives a kid the impression that, there's a scarcity of money, that money is always scarce. And that feeling of scarcity can, ruin them just as much as feelings of abundance.
Yeah, and the thing is, and it goes back to control. Stop letting money control your life like that. You're in control of money. Money doesn't control you. So when you tell your children, I can't afford it, that's saying I don't have any control over the money.
That's right.
Change the relationship. Yeah,
Yeah, and the same with food.
exactly.
Say that, it's saying I don't have control over my food program.
Exactly.
Like I
I,
had a young woman who she was 12 or something, and her mother, she said, "Can I get some more French fries?" And her mom said something about, if you haven't you had enough already, or if you eat
wow.
those, you're going to get fat, or whatever. And that started just that comment started her down a long road of having an eating disorder for
Wow.
most of her life. Well, it wasn't just that, obviously,
Mhm.
but that's the thing she remembers as being like the trigger. Uh,
Yeah,
but before that, her mom was dieting, always commenting about her body, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as parents, we don't realize that we can tell our kids a bunch of great stuff, but they are going to do what they see us do. They're not going to do what we say to do.
exactly.
And they
Exactly. That's powerful. God, that's really powerful. And so, yeah, I my childhood, my mom she just didn't show me. But on the flip side, before I left work, I had a young kid that I worked with, and his dad, from the time he was young, his dad made him see how hard he worked. He saw his dad work 10, 15, 20 hours a day. And so his dad never gave him anything. He made him work for it. And he used to actively talk with his son about money. And they were really well off, how much they made, what things cost, the
Hmm.
sacrifices that are involved. And this kid has a really great relationship with money. I mean, he has no debt. Um, he has like no car payments. He's saving money because his father actively taught him about money. And in addition to that, his father, instead of him going to the finance company to get a car, he saved over the years all of his birthday money and whatever money he got. And he was able to literally put like $12,000 down on his car. So I know.
Wow,
So
that's
now he only has like 8,000 left to pay off on his car, and his
yeah,
dad paid off the car and he's paying his dad back.
yeah,
So that's how you teach your kids about money. Just talk to them. Even if you make a mistake, talk to them about the mistake. Tell them the mistakes that you made and talk them through that and what you would do differently. That's how you change that's how you change your relationship with money, and that's how you can impact your children.
yeah. Because money problems, like food problems, can affect multiple generations.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids model what see you modeling bad food behaviors, and then they do the same with their kids, and so on and so forth. So then it becomes multiple generations, and somewhere along the line, we've got to interrupt that progression
Exactly.
of bad money habits and bad food habits. So I think this is a really important conversation, and most people, I don't see much talk about food and money, and I never see any talk about trauma and how it affects your money
Oh,
situation.
oh yes.
And we're just starting to talk about how trauma affects, people's eating disorders or addictions. That's
Oh yeah.
in the last couple of years just becoming acceptable to admit that, well, yeah, maybe it's the trauma that has caused the eating problem. Maybe it's the trauma that has caused the addiction. So now we can add to that, that definitely the trauma can also affect your relationship with money.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I remember right after I was raped, I was feeling so emotionally bad. And it's almost like I wanted the pain to stop. And but I wanted to feel better. So I still see this in my head. I remember going to the mall and writing checks for things that I don't even know what I bought. I went to K Jewelers, I went to a bunch of clothing places, and I wanted to feel better about myself. I wanted the pain to stop.
Yeah.
And and my mom, she didn't know how to deal with it, and I don't blame her for anything like that. I mean, she didn't know how to help me. She couldn't talk to me about it because she's always been unemotional about those kind of things, and I don't blame her at all for it, but she didn't know how to help me. And she didn't know how to tell me, okay, you know what, we need to stop. and you need to go see someone. She didn't know how to do that. And so I remember vividly, that's how my very dysfunctional relationship with money started, is when right after it happened, I was just feeling so bad every day. And that's what I would do every day. I would go and spend money all the time and eat.
That, that is an amazing revelation and insight, because most people don't connect those dots. But when we talk about trauma and eating disorders, it's basically the same. People are in pain. They're in pain. They don't know how to deal with the pain. They just want the pain to be over with. And so they do whatever they know to do whatever they can figure out to do to get rid of the pain. So that story you just told about the mall is, that's an incredible insight that you have. And being able to make that, connect the dots like that is so important for people. So Francine, I think you're going to have to be a regular guest on my podcast.
I love this. I love talking about it. And people never knew my story. And I remember when I opened the business, and I had to make a real connection with people, because they had to know that I have been there. Any kind of money problem that you've had, Francine has had over the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
But I want to show people you can recover from it. And even the eating, my eating gets so much better. I was just thinking this past week, my eating is so much better. I was very happy with the podcast I saw a couple of days ago, when she talks about being mindful of what you put in your mouth. And I'm like, wow, it's the same thing with money, being mindful where your money goes. You have to be mindful what you eat. And I've been employing that. Oh my gosh, the benefits of me sleeping all night has been just incredible, because I've changed my eating. And it hasn't been a big change. I mean, I had a cookie or two, no biggie, but I didn't gorge on it. Eating more vegetables.
It's that what you're describing is just having freedom around
exactly
food, and also freedom around money, the freedom to understand that you don't have to be stressed all the time around money.
Exactly.
And the freedom to there really is a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment when you're able to pay your bills. I noticed that. Like when you're paying your bills on time, it actually enhances your self-esteem.
Exactly.
You feel like, oh, I'm a competent grown-up adult,
Yeah. And your stress level, when your stress level, instead of it being at 100 and it drops down to nothing, because your rent's paid, your car note is paid, your insurance is paid, and cell phone and all that, and you're like, okay, I can deal with this debt of mine, and you are in control of it, your family's happy, you're happy, it changes your life drastically.
It really
does.
Yeah.
It really changes your life.
Well, tell everybody about your new business that you formed. I think I saw you have a Facebook page and or a website. I'm not sure.
I have a Facebook page and a website, Purposeful Credit Solutions.
You're gonna have to say that slower, because that's a mouthful.
It's Purposeful Credit Solutions. The reason I name it purposeful is because when you gain control of your money, you now have the chance to pursue your passion, your purpose in life. Awesome. So it's changing the relationship with money. Now you have purpose. You can go and create wealth for you and your family. And I love, everybody's like, that's a long name. Yes, it is. But I love the name, because when I changed my relationship with money, I was able to pursue my passion and my purpose. That's what.
So give us your website address one more time.
It's Purposeful Credit Solutions. .com. I help people with their money. I help them with their budgets, and I'm helping people with a lot of things. Especially when it comes to money, when they look at me and I can empathize with them, I'm like, oh yeah, I know about the whole payday loan thing. Yeah, this is how you get out of it. I'm telling you, I've done it all. So people are like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one who has gone to a bunch of payday loans.
Which is so important that that people know that they're not alone, that they feel heard. So Francine, thank you once again for being on the podcast. I know we'll have you back again. This is such an important topic, but I appreciate your being with me today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.